Hello. Okay, before I say it, I always hate butchering people's names. So I'm looking at, is it Cherie or Sherry? But I guess that's one and the same. But if I'm saying it wrong, please don't be upset with me. I hate when people butcher my name, and it happens, definitely. But I'm sitting here looking at your email, and as I'm meditating before, okay, if I can pick my cards up. As I'm meditating before all of my personals, I always hone in on what's being said in the email and see what it is that Spirit speaks to me. And when I got to your question, because I wasn't hearing anything until I got to your question, and when you said, why did he need to come back to me with lies when my life and career was destroyed by lies? And the thing that Spirit said was, and it's more or less a rhetorical question, so it's probably something you would want to write this question down and meditate with it. But what Spirit said to me instantly was, what lies are you telling yourself? Right? So if something doesn't hit you instantaneously when hearing that, then, don't allow the ego to jump in and, because of course the ego is going to be like, I'm not lying myself. And anyway. But it's sitting in silence with that question, offering that question to the universe. So more or less taking some time every day and sitting in a quiet space and saying, Spirit, what lies am I telling myself? In what ways am I being dishonest with myself? And not strain to think of an answer, and then just sit in silence for 5 minutes to 10 minutes. And don't try to force anything to come up. Whatever comes up, allow it to come up. And create or purchase, really, a special little journal for that. And write down everything that comes to you. And it doesn't matter if it makes sense, if it doesn't make sense, if it's just a number or, a name or what have you. Those are going to be little breadcrumbs that are going to lead you to what it is you need to know, right? Because if we use psychology terms, this would be considered, like lies we tell ourselves would be considered our personal bias. So it's not that, we're delusional. It's just there's certain things that we automatically accept as truths that aren't necessarily true. If that makes sense. So I'm going to ask Spirit to give us clear and direct guidance for Cherie, please, Spirit, in reference to her question. She wants to know, why did he have to come back to her with lies when her life and career were destroyed by lies? Oh, gosh. Spirit just said something again. That may be one of the lies. Spirit said that your life and your career isn't destroyed. That's interesting. Clear and direct guidance, please, Spirit. Please give me insight into Cherie's situation, please, Spirit. And give me the ability to interpret the answer to her question in a clear and concise manner. And I thank you in advance, Spirit. 1 second. Sorry about that. I had to hand my mom my keys to let her use my car. My apologies. Okay, Spirit. Clear and direct guidance, please, Spirit. Give me the ability to interpret the answer to her question, please, Spirit, in a clear and concise manner. And thank you in advance, Spirit. Interesting. Make sure I have room up here. One thing that's important to note with the High Priestess reverse is that usually shows up whenever we're not listening to our intuition. So meaning that whenever there's certain things that are going on in our life, Spirit gives us kind of like a heads up. And the way that I describe this is if you think about like the Tower card, for instance. And the Tower card is indicative of like, a shocking, life-altering type of situation, right? Well, when the High Priestess is in reverse with our energy, meaning we're listening to our intuition, that means that when the tower is about to fall, like when there's the foundation is cracking or little pieces are like kind of falling down from the tower, that would be symbolic of your intuition telling you something you need to do to protect yourself or how to get out of dodge beforehand. And it also speaks of discernment. So it's kind of like in reference to the guy you're asking about, it's less of a question of, and I'm saying it's like going forward, not in this specific situation, but it's like whenever people come into your life, it's a need to utilize your intuition and your discernment so you know the why before you ever engage with the person. So with that coming out first is letting me know that that wasn't done in in reference to him coming back. Next we have, that's probably why, we have the Three of Cups in reverse. And of course, this is like, the affair card. And then seeing that next to the High Priestess, that kind of makes it like the other woman type of situation. So with this, it's, so this is kind of like a double meaning. In other words, it's a need to have used one's discernment to be able to know that there was like more going on underneath the surface with this person, right? So pretty much that he had someone else and was trying to make you like the hidden figure in the situation that he had going on already, right? But this is more or less saying part one is listen to your intuition and be discerning of people's motives when they are coming back into your life, right? Next I need to turn off the notifications on my phone. Okay. And then it comes on my computer. Wonderful. Next, we have the Page of Wands in the reverse, right? And this is letting me know that this person, another thing that could have been discerned about them is the fact that this person is extremely immature, right? The way that he handles things is very childlike. You know what I mean? So instead of coming in and being honest, it's more or less a person who's attempting to have their cake and eat it too, not taking into account how other people's emotions are being affected. Now, something that I can say in general about human beings, period, all of us have a tendency to be self-centered, not necessarily in a narcissistic kind of way, but more or less in the sense that, by nature, we think about ourselves first and foremost. So then when you have a person who's not necessarily empathic per se, or very caring about other people, the last thing that they're going to do is think about how their decisions are affecting other people. They're more or less feeling as if, hey, if my motives aren't so good, you should be listening to yourself that's saying not to mess with me, right? That's kind of how they'll justify it to not feel so bad, right? It's like, oh, you should have listened to your intuition. Like, I never told you X, Y, Z. You know what I mean? And because of a lack of emotional investment on their end and a lack of empathy for other people, that's why it's so easy for them to just be like, oh, hey, my girlfriend said I can't talk to you anymore. Sorry about that, Next, we have the Death card. And that's letting me know that this is supposed to be a transformative experience for you, right? So it's more or less this being a lesson, and even seeing in the sense of like how Spirit was saying that your life and your career isn't destroyed. It's like this is an experience in which you're supposed to take these lessons and apply it to your life in a positive way, right? It's more or less needing to trust yourself. So kind of what I'm hearing here is like, in what ways are you lying to yourself? It's like, a form of that would be not listening to yourself, right? And trusting people external to you more than you're trusting yourself in your own judgment, right? But it's more or less a need to move forward, though, because this is kind of like a rebirth situation. And this is so weird that I'm thinking of this, but it's kind of like Hurricane Katrina, which is really weird to use that as a reference. Because, of course, I'm from New Orleans, right? Now, life prior to Hurricane Katrina, every person who's a New Orleans native felt New Orleans was just the bomb, even though our murder rate was crazy and it was really dirty and stinky, right? But Hurricane Katrina happens, it displaces everyone, completely destroys the city. People lose their homes, families are torn apart, what have you. And it's literally what seemed to be the absolute worst thing that could possibly happen to the city, right? But now, over a decade later, I can even say myself, not saying in the sense like, oh, the hurricane is the best thing, to ever happen, but it was transformative for the city. Because whereas New Orleans was like, poor economy, stinky, dirty, poor housing, murders every other day. Well, not even every other day, every day. It's like now for, a person who isn't on, the Skid Row side of life, it's like New Orleans now is more livable. It's more family oriented. A lot of businesses have come, there's jobs, the housing is better. It's almost as if it's been upgraded, but there would have been no incentive to do that had the hurricane not come and destroyed a lot of stuff and sent away a lot of the people who were killing people and things of the sort, right? So this is more or less a rebirth, and that's what I'm seeing in this. It's like, just like if you look at that as an illustrative way of New Orleans being reborn into a better version of itself, this is what I'm seeing for you. It's like everything you've experienced up to this point. Yes, it sucked. Yes, it seems like your life is destroyed. Your past life is. But it's imperative to learn a lesson from all of this so that you can be reborn and it can transform you. And the main thing to note with all of this person doing this, it wasn't really about you. How other people treat us says more about them than it does about us. You know what I mean? But this was used as a means to transform you to another path and another life that you may have never found yourself on that path had you stayed in the life that you were prior to. You know what I mean? And I know that's hard to see sometimes. And it's weird. Spirit was kind of telling me this last night. It was something along the lines of, how was it? What it is that we want isn't always what it is that we need, right? But it's almost as if when tragedy happens in our life, or bad things or things that we feel are unfair happen in our life, it can feel like a catastrophe. Like, how could this happen to me? It was always my dream to do this. But when you feel as if you already have the answer to life, it's hard to ever see the truth, right? So, of course, it's like, and if we use the example of like with your job situation, it's like, all my life I've always wanted to be a teacher. There's nothing else I could possibly do. How could I move on from this? Why would Spirit think that this was a good idea to take this away from me? But the thing is that that would be putting you in a mindset above Spirit, saying that you know better than Spirit does, in a sense, right? And I'm not saying that in a condescending way, just still in an illustrative kind of way, It's believing that if everything in my life is unfolding from my highest good, then that means that even if this doesn't seem in my highest good, I have to trust that it's going to lead me to that, right? So all in all, whether it be with your past experiences or with this person, it's meant to teach you a lesson about trusting yourself, listening to your intuition, but the purpose of it is to allow you to transform into a higher version of yourself. This is interesting. Let's see, Heather. We have the Queen of Cups in reverse. That's interesting. And this is telling me, in so many words, there's a need to do some soul searching. There's a need to kind of dig deeper into the emotions that you're feeling in order to have this transformation. Because this is more or less an energy that's coming in from spirit that's cutting you off from this disease limb of your past. But now it's like your personal responsibility is to look deeper within oneself, right? This card also talks about insecurities, right? Now, the lack of trust for oneself or not listening to your intuition can be directly correlated to a lack of trust for self, right? Or an insecurity, you know? So it's a need to address that. This also speaks of addictions, you know? I don't know if that's a struggle of yours, but if it is, this is more or less a contemplation to not allow you to kind of fall back into that going forward to cope with your emotions. It's a need to face this head on and not to kind of, use anything to deter from it. Now, when I say addiction, it doesn't necessarily have to be drugs or anything. It could be binge watching Netflix. It could be, eating unhealthy food or, a mindset like self-loathing and things of the sort, right? Now, with the Three of Wands in reverse, this is like the minor arcana version of the High Priestess. This is saying it's a lack of foresight. So it's an inability to see beyond what is in front of the eyes, right? And this is what causes a lot of setbacks and a lot of plans to fail, right? Because it's taking everything for face value. So it's thinking if a person is coming back to my life and they're saying their intentions are good, I'm just going to, go with it, right? Now, with the Ace of Cups in reverse, this is talking about depression. That's still bringing me to this energy. Because even though this is kind of like past tense, this is showing me with the Queen of Cups in reverse being here that these are things that you're still feeling. And it's a need to process those emotions. So it's more or less needing to set yourself free from whatever it is that you're feeling in reference to this. Because granted, that'll hurt your feelings that somebody, does that. But it's a need to qualify it, knowing that this had nothing to do with you and this is just the person being an asshole. But the way to protect yourself going forward is a need to listen to yourself and discern people's motives and not just take what it is that they're showing you for face value, right? Because not all people's intentions are good, right? Next, we have the King of Pentacles. Now, that is an interesting contrast. Now, if we look at this as this individual, right? A grown-ass man that's showing up as an immature little kid versus the King of Pentacles. The King of Pentacles is someone who's like solid, stable, practical, consistent, a mentor, a person to look up to that's financially stable, right? It's pretty much like everybody's awesome big brother who utilizes wisdom. Now, this in contrast to this, right? This is more or less, well, I'll say this in two ways. Oh, wow. Okay, so Spirit just gave me another message about that. All right. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. All right. We attract what we are, right? So I'm seeing a contrast here between this dude that you were dealing with, right? And then this person. This is more or less what you're being called into being. This is a person who's personally accountable, someone who takes responsibility for their actions, right? A person who trusts themselves, a person who's an amazing, decision maker. And this is more or less an energy that's needing to be embodied. So when it comes to relationships, it's almost like Spirit is showing me like, okay, the intuitive side, but where it gets into more of the 3D side is like standards or patterns of behavior or character traits. And it's bringing attention to what character traits are you looking for in individuals, right? Because it's like a person like this, they would never be a part of something like that. because it's like they have too much self-respect to hurt another person's feelings or lead a person on or sully a commitment that they're in. This person just follows like their passions and their desires. They don't think about anything. It's like they're just acting on impulse. This person is more strategy driven, right? So this is more or less saying to me that in any way that this reflects how you responded to things, whether it be just responding to stuff out of emotion, not listening to your gut feelings or your intuition, or like, you know, if a person offers you something, you take it because it's on offer, you know what I'm saying? And not having foresight of where this can go. Is the person offering commitment? Are we talking about, you know, the future, or am I just assuming that that's going to happen, right? Because as long as you don't listen to yourself or your intuition or have any type of tangible action forward in reference to, you know, people, relationships, so on and so forth, it's always going to leave you in a space to where you're depressed and you could be dealing with a person that doesn't have the best intentions, right? So if we take this, if we process our emotions, we see where it is that we've gone wrong past tense, right? And we make better decisions for the future and ground ourselves, then this means you draw someone into your life just like this, right? And I hope that that's making sense. Now, next, with the Seven of Cups, this is still taking me back to this emotional space. There needs to be a transformation in how it is that you're relating to relationships, right? Because what this is saying to me is that when a person comes into your life, and like this person, it's you getting clouded with possibilities, like what could be, you know, kind of daydreaming type of stuff like that. But it's still drawing in people that have commitment issues, like people who are emotionally unavailable, right? And to go back to what Spirit was saying in the beginning of like, what lies are you telling yourself? Seeing this diagonal from the Queen of Cups, and on some level or another, it's like you're emotionally unavailable as well, right? But it's just not manifesting as a person who's immature and malicious and has a whole bunch of third parties and stuff. It's just not being emotionally available to the self, right? It's not diving deep and addressing, you know, one's sadness, depression, disappointment, right? And this also speaks of a little codependency, which of course goes into insecurity. So it's like I more or less, it's almost like giving your trust away, right? So what this is kind of showing me all in all, in reference to your question, it's like, why did this person come back to me with lies when my life and career was destroyed by lies, right? And it's more or less like I'm seeing how this is being drawn in, because it's like, proverbially speaking, one is lying to themselves because they're not listening to their truth. So it's almost giving your power away to other people, right? So it's trusting other people more than you trust yourself, and whatever they're giving you, you're just taking it and going with it as opposed to listening to yourself. Now, the whole reason why you're not is because there's a disconnect from your emotions. And it's like staying a lot in a cloudy headspace. You know what I mean? Like almost like, do I want to say daydreaming? It's a lack of being grounded. You know what I mean? I hope that that's making sense. It's like one is not grounded, and it's allowing oneself to sell them pipe dreams. It's like, because I'm seeing it like a ship in the ocean without an anchor. You know what I mean? It's like kind of wherever the wind blows, that's where you go. Whoa, 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 whoa. Oh, man. The King of Wands in reverse. Whew. Well, when it comes to moving forward, like, and seeing these two together, this is like commitment issues, emotional unavailability. This is not like, it's a level of like weakness and strategy and not being ready to move forward, right? And then it is a codependent energy, because this is like the perfect example of like a codependent and like a person who's like a narcissist, right? This is a person who's, I'm not listening to myself, so I'm open to influence, right? This is a person who's a bully, right? This is a person who wants to be in control and preys on other people's weaknesses, right? So it's kind of like, if you look at it like, a key to a lock, right? This would be the key, this would be the lock, and it's a perfect fit. Because a person who isn't fully embodied by themselves, who doesn't listen to themselves, this person can come along and control you and embody you. And I'm saying this figuratively speaking. So it's almost like, if you think about like a person who isn't listening to themselves or isn't in tune with themselves, it would be like, I don't know, like if you thought of a human body that you could put on as like a bodysuit, right? It's like this person can come along and play puppet master, because since, there's nothing else in there but this exterior thing, then this person can come along and use it however it is it wants to be utilized, right? Because it's being in a position of submission and allowing another person to have control and dominion over them, right? So it's more or less, instead of being empowered, it's giving one's power to the outside world and allowing people to use you as like a puppet, right? But it's a need to stand up for oneself. So the reason why this person did this, right? And this is not putting any blame on you at all, because the person is just an asshole. But it's just, the reason why the person did this is because they could. Literally, right? Because it's like a predatory type of thing. If I know that you're going to let me take advantage of you, I'm going to take advantage of you. You know what I mean? So what all of this is saying is needing to get back in tune with yourself and to embody yourself and empower yourself and to be this person. So that way you're not influenced by any of this. But this is working for you. Because with the death card, it's saying that whatever it is you've experienced up to this point, that's over with. But now it's time to learn the lessons and to see the truth about why it is things like this has happened. It's more or less stopping oneself from being vulnerable to other people's like narcissistic kind of influence and being used and, kind of shrouded in confusion. And at the bottom of your deck, you have the Ace of Pentacles. So this is an opportunity for a new beginning for you. Like that's freaking beautiful, to be honest. If we looked at all of this energy that's happened, this is more or less like a nugget of truth that Spirit is offering you. And then saying, okay, here is the new energy. Here is a new path. Take everything it is that you've learned from this point and move forward. How this person treated you had nothing to do with you. It's because they're an asshole. But the gift that you get from this experience is now you see where you went wrong, how you allowed yourself to be vulnerable to this person's influence. So now you can take this wisdom, plant this seed, and you can grow a new life from it, right? So there's no need to dwell over what's behind you, because what's before you is so much greater than what you have left behind. So that is the answer to your question, my dear. I hope that it helped. Let me know in the comments below this video if I could pick up this card. That'd be nice. Let me know in the comments below this video if you have any questions or anything. And thank you for ordering a reading with me. It's been a pleasure. I love your face, and I hope to hear from you sooner than later. Deuces.